Mexico has produced some great boxers over the years, like Chavez Sr., Juan Manuel Marquez, Marco Antonio Barrera, and Salvador Sanchez. But today, Canelo Alvarez has created history by becoming the first ever Mexican undisputed world champion, and it is only fair to ask if he is the best boxer of this era. Canelo was born in the Mexican city of Guadalajara. When he was only 5 years old, he was working with his father to sell ice creams. He started boxing when he was only 13 years old and became a professional boxer when he was 15. His talent was undeniable. He was beating up grown men and became a local hero. He beat up top Mexican boxers in the beginning of his career to rise through the ranks. As his career progressed, his level of opponents was constantly increasing. He started fighting world champions, and the first world champion he fought was Jose Cotto. He became an international sensation when he beat an all-time great Sugar Shane Mosley in 2012. But 2013 was his toughest and one of the most important years in his boxing career. First, he came up against an undefeated world champion, Austin Trout. This was a battle of two undefeated boxers. In the end, Canelo secured a unanimous decision victory. Although this wasn't his most convincing victory, we can see glimpses of his ever-improving defense in this bout. He also scored a knockdown in the 7th round, which changed the course of the fight. This win earned him a fight against Floyd Mayweather Jr., the best boxer in the world at the time. Again, this was a battle of two undefeated boxers. But on fight night, Mayweather's incredible defense came out on top as he beat Canelo by unanimous decision. This was Canelo's first loss of his career. He learned a lot from this loss. His mental strength was tested during this period. Instead of giving up, he was working harder than ever with his team. After the loss, he didn't back out of challenges. Instead, he constantly fought high-level opponents. 10 months later, he was involved in another competitive fight against Erislandy Lara. In the end, Canelo edged this bout by the thinnest of margins. The following year, that is 2015, was one of the best years of his career. He absolutely destroyed James Kirkland and beat one of the greatest welterweights of all time, Miguel Cotto. In his next fight, he brutally knocked out Amir Khan in round 6. It was a perfect example of a killer punch, and this knockout struck fear into the majority of the middleweight division. 4 months later, he knocked out another Brit, Liam Smith, by a devastating body shot to the liver. In 2017, Canelo faced off against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who was the son of the legendary boxer Chavez Sr. The fight didn't live up to its expectations. It was a one-sided beatdown as Canelo completely outboxed Chavez Jr. But this was a very important day in his career because after the fight, he did this.
Golovkin, you are next, my friend.
The start of an epic rivalry. This was one of the biggest and one of the most anticipated fights of the decade. This was a mouth-watering matchup between a knockout artist and a high-pressure counter-puncher. In the initial rounds, Canelo was landing the more harder and effective punches. Golovkin's jab played a key role. As the fight progressed, Canelo was mostly on the ropes. Triple G was landing more jabs, whereas Canelo was landing more power punches. Both the boxers showed great perseverance and fighting spirit. Both the fighters took some massive hits, but they chose fight over flight. In the championship rounds, Canelo gassed out, but Golovkin was constantly applying pressure. In the last 2 rounds, both the fighters gave everything they had. What a sensational fight between two great middleweights. Now, it was time to go to the scorecards. Many people thought Triple G won the fight. Now came one of the most controversial scorecards in boxing history.
Adelaide Bird scores it 118 to 110 for Canelo.
One of the judges gave the fight to Golovkin and the other scoring it a draw, resulting in no winner or loser. The fans were unhappy. The incredible show put on by the boxers was overshadowed by inept judging. The rematch was scheduled in March of 2018, but a shocking revelation was made public. Canelo tested positive for the banned substance, clenbuterol, so he was out for 6 months. Clenbuterol is often taken by athletes for muscle gain and fat loss. However, the amount of clenbuterol found would decide if Canelo had taken it intentionally. In Mexico, clenbuterol is used as a growth-promoting substance in animal husbandry to make the animals larger. So, many Mexican athletes have tested positive for this substance because the meat they were eating was contaminated. Canelo, at the time of the test, was in Mexico. What's less reported, however, is the following hair follicle test Canelo had done. This time, his test came back negative for clenbuterol. The negative hair follicle test adds credibility to Canelo's excuse of eating contaminated meat. The rematch was rescheduled in September. In this bout, Canelo made the necessary adjustments, as his counters were sharp and his defense was incredible. In every round, there was constant action. Triple G landed double the jabs Canelo landed, but Canelo compensated it by landing more power punches. The first fight was great, but this fight was much better. Both the boxers showed great skill, and this fight again went to the scorecards. After 12 hard-fought rounds, Canelo secured a decision victory, which is still regarded as one of the best fights in the middleweight division. 3 months later, Canelo destroyed Rocky Fielding. On 4th May 2019, he showed one of his best defensive performances of his career against Danny Jacobs. His head movement was out of this world. In the end, he secured a unanimous decision victory. 6 months later, he surprised the boxing world as he jumped from the middleweight division, which is 160 pounds, to the light heavyweight division, which is 175 pounds. People thought that he was too small for the division. He didn't fight a nobody. He fought Sergey Kovalev, who was a world champion. After 10 rounds of action, the fight was really close. But Canelo pulled the trigger in the 11th round as he brutally knocked out Kovalev and surprised the boxing world. Because of COVID, he couldn't fight for another year. He made his comeback on December 2020. He dropped his weight by 7 pounds and decided to take on Callum Smith, who was ranked number 1 in the 168-pound division. This bout was really one-sided as Canelo dominated him and secured a unanimous decision win. This year, he destroyed Avni Yildirim in 3 rounds. He fought Billy Joe Saunders on May 8th. There was a lot of hype before the fight, and Fury predicted that Saunders would put on a clinic. But after the fight, Saunders was the one who went to the clinic because Canelo broke his eye socket and made him quit. Now, the fight that had to happen was Canelo vs Caleb Plant, which would decide who would be the first undisputed champion in the super middleweight division. Canelo beat Plant and created history. His trainer Eddie Reynoso has played a huge part in his career as he was his trainer from the beginning of Canelo's career. Canelo has worked really hard and is never scared of losing as he fights the best of the best all the time. He also deserves a lot of respect for cleaning up this division in the span of only 11 months. If he is the best boxer of this era or not is a topic open to interpretation, but he is definitely one of the best for what is done for the sport. This week's shoutout is Prapon of Duty. The correct answer for last week's question was Sergio Ramos. If you want to be next week's shoutout, here is the question for the day. Who is the only opponent Canelo has faced twice in his career? The first person to write the correct answer for this question is going to get a shoutout in my next video. So please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Until next time.
It's running.